Golden State Media Concepts bring you Book Review Podcast, a haven for bookworms of all ages and the widest genres, from mystery to memoirs, romance to comedy, fantasy to sci-fi. If you love to read, this is the podcast for you. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Book Review Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah, and I hope you are doing well. I don't want to say I'm really glad July is almost over, because I'm afraid if I say that, I'll jinx it and that August will be somehow worse. I mean, 2020, wow, I don't know where that came from. 2020 has just been crazy already, and for me, July was like, said to the whole year of 2020, hold my beer. I'm gonna see how crazy, just show you how crazy July can be. It has been an emotional roller coaster. I am so tired. Plus, I have another sinus infection. Those of you who are regular listeners, you're probably sick of me saying I have another sinus infection. Several years of podcasts, and how many sinus infections have I had? Yeah, sorry about that. At least I can't transmit them through the podcast. I hope. That would be really awkward if I could do that. That is not a superpower I want. In other news, July hasn't been all bad. It's been a lot bad, but my hubby is trying to get back onto his low-carb diet, and so he keeps sending me all of these crazy fun links that he finds, one of which today was for low-carb cereal. He loves cereal, loves to eat it as a snack, but cereal is not low-carb. And so this is not an endorsement in any way, shape, or form, but he found today low-carb cereal by Magic Spoon, and this is our latest adventure in trying low-carb food. He is ordering some boxes, and we're going to give it a shot. I don't know how it'll turn out, but hopefully it will help to replace his regular cereal craving, because that man could eat his weight in cereal on a daily basis and be perfectly happy, but his blood sugar, not so much. So, July, not a great month, but hey, finding some low-carb alternatives. There's got to be a bright side, right? Low-carb alternatives, that's my bright side. And books. Books are always my bright side. I mentioned at the end of the last episode, which was 872 years ago, that I had 2 interviews with authors of short stories in a row, which I find kind of fun, the way the interviews fall, because they are scheduled so far in advance. I don't realize always until they happen what kind of coincidences might come up. So today I'm speaking with author Nikki Dolson about her short story collection. It is called Love and Other Criminal Behavior. The first collection from noted short fiction author Nikki Dolson, Love and Other Criminal Behavior provides readers 15 tales of crime fiction, all centered on Black women from different regions and backgrounds, addressing themes of race, class, gender, marriage, deceit, betrayal, and sinister comeuppance. The stories offer unique and differing perspectives and would make great fodder for an anthology series a la Black Mirror, but focused on crime, love, boxing, and knives. There are so many things to grab your attention in that brief paragraph. First of all, mad props for the use of the word comeuppance, not a word you get in a blurb very often. Also, reference to Black Mirror. It's not my favorite series, but my husband loves it. Not as much as he loves cereal, but he does love Black Mirror, and I can see the similarities in Nikki's stories and those of Black Mirror. Although I will say, I prefer Nikki's stories over those of Black Mirror. So that's just me. But and then I like that they focus on crime, love, boxing and knives. I mean, obviously love and other criminal behaviors, you know it's going to be about love and crime, but boxing and knives, there you go. I'm easily entertained by blurbs, aren't I? But that's okay. We're going to go ahead and turn to the interview with Nikki so she can tell you more about this short story collection, and I will stop talking about cereal and comeuppance and other strange things. So again, the book is called Love and Other Criminal Behavior. The author is Nikki Dolson, and let's turn now to that interview. Hi, Nikki. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
I am excited to have you here. We are going to talk about your collection of short stories. It's called Love and Other Criminal Behavior. But before we get to the book, let's learn a little bit more about you. If you could share a bit about yourself, that would be great.
Well, I am a mom. I've got 3 kids. They're mostly grown. I have one more in high school, one more through the gauntlet. And I work in civil engineering out here in Las Vegas, Nevada, and write whenever I can, which is on Post-it notes. It's all the time, and that's me mostly.
Nice. Do you just have Post-it notes stuck in random places then?
Oh, honestly, they live in my purse, and I'm like, where's that note? I know I wrote that line of dialogue somewhere. Or that really great title, which I never use. If I write it down and post it now, it's never going to be a title I use. But I'm like, this is the best one yet. Yeah.
I love that. So Love and Other Criminal Behavior is a collection of, is it 13 short stories?
It is.
So it's 13 short stories. So talk a little bit about those stories as a collection.
These stories, I've written them over about 14 years. They run the gamut from straight up crime fiction to just relationships between mothers and daughters and fathers and daughters, and just I think they're funny and sad and often bloody, even when there's no bodies. But I think they all talk a little bit about love and what love can make you do, those other criminal behaviors.
Yeah, and it really is about not just romantic love, but there's a lot of the different types of relationships in here,
Mm-hmm.
and what those relationships can make you do or make you feel, and etc. So what was your initial inspiration? Well, you said you've been writing them over 14 years. So then
Yeah.
What made you finally decide to put them into a collection?
Oh, my publisher came calling and went, so you got anything? And I'm like, I don't have anything. And they came back, and you sure you don't have anything? Because I would really like it if you had something. And I'm like, I have these stories. And they're like, yes. And so suddenly I was, I had to put together what seemed like a real collection, and had to really figure out what it is that I love about short story collections. Because there are some that I absolutely adore, and I'm like, okay, what is it about those that I can apply to mine? And I had a writing teacher who, when I told him that I was doing this, he also was like, high five. He's been dying for me to do it, but just there's a lot of you have to figure out to put together a collection. I mean, if you don't start writing towards, this is going to be a collection, and you have an idea what those themes are, it's like, what is it that I'm hung up on as a writer, as a person? What works well together as stories also? And I happened across another short story collection from another excellent writer, Helen Ellis. She wrote American Housewife. That collection was the perfect version of a story collection, I think. And it was exactly what I wanted mine to be. And, she has these stories, they're not all literary or all, they run the gamut. These people in her stories do everything, good, bad, and different. There's kidnapping, there's ghosts, there's, murder. And I thought, okay, if she can do that, so can I. But again, still, what is it that links us? And for me, it was love and relationships. And then it was just kind of weeding out what I thought were better stories, and not so great ones, rewriting some of them to try to make them stronger. And then ultimately I was like, 13 sounds good. I have to stop touching it now. Here, take it.
13 is a good number for something, for something like this.
Yeah.
So you had to kind of weed, go through your collection, decide what stories fit, what didn't. Are there any connections between the stories? I know there's at least 2 stories that have one character or a character that crosses over. Any other connections throughout the book?
Well, so there are the boxing stories, which there's character in Taking the Hit, Kendra, who shows up in another story around boxing. And then there are, I think there's a dance teacher on Mondays We Dance in the Park who shows up, or who's referenced in Mendelssohn in the Park. And, I wrote them years and years apart and didn't necessarily cotton on to the fact that I had done that. But yeah, there's a little crossover in some of those places.
Yeah. When you sit down to write a short story, or how does that process work for you? Do you just does an idea pop in? Do you have a post-it note in your purse that says write this idea? How does that usually work for you?
There might be an idea that's floating around in my purse, but if it's floating around in my purse, it's also floating around in my subconscious. But truthfully, it's a character shows up and they're saying this thing, and when I focus on it, it's like, oh, they want to rob a bank. Why do they want to rob a bank? And it just, I feel like if it's a strong enough idea, it just kind of rolls out at me. Like, here we are, they're going to rob a bank. Why are they robbing a bank? Well, it's because of this. Oh, what are the ramifications of that? And just the pieces come together. Let's say I don't have to work at it, but I also think a strong story, at least for me, the strongest stories I've written have shown up like that. And it's just like, here is this character, they are going on a journey and they're going to take you by your hand, and I'm just trying to write to keep up with them.
And so what do you think draws you to writing short stories as opposed to novellas or full-length novels, which you have, but what do you think draws you to writing the short stories?
Short stories are my first love, 100%. It is, it's that saying, you can write the perfect short story, and, a novel is a flawed thing, but it's supposed to be. But it's the idea that you could write something perfect and entertain someone and, have them be in that world for, 20 minutes, a half hour, an hour, and exist there. And the short story is this perfect thing that I'm always trying to perfect. I have written longer. The longer book, my first book, was really a set of linked stories that then came together. And honestly, if I could write a novel the way I can write a short story, I would probably write one of those. But I'm working on it, but it's not easy. Not that short stories are, but I seem to be able to do one far easier than the other.
Right. Sure. Well, and you've got a full-time job and a family, and so I imagine that there's some time issues in there.
Yeah.
That was probably an understatement, but I tend to be pretty good at those. So now that you've got an idea of the nature of this short story collection by Nikki Dolson, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. And when we come back, Nikki will be talking about what she likes about writing crime fiction. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
GSMC Beauty Tips Podcast gives you advice on everything from hair to fashion to skincare products. We'll talk about the latest trends in makeup, hairstyles, and anti-aging remedies. And we'll cover all of the newest fashion trends. If you have an interest in or questions about the beauty trends that might work best for you, the Golden State Media Concepts Beauty Tips Podcast has got you covered. Download the GSMC Beauty Tips Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast. Today I am speaking with author Nikki Dolson about her new collection of short stories. It's called Love and Other Criminal Behavior. So let's go ahead and turn back to that interview.
What draws you then to writing crime fiction?
My love of movies, like murder mysteries, were always the thing I watched with my mom when I was younger. And then that just, morphed into a genuine love of Alfred Hitchcock movies. And from there, the springboard to, who are the greats who were writing it. You get Chandler, you get Hammett, James and Cain, though. I think of the old ones he's the one that I love the most, is James and Cain. His stories, Postman Always Rings Twice, Mildred Pierce, Double Indemnity. These stories are so very much regular people veering away from the straight and narrow that they know they should stay on, for reasons that are understandable and sometimes not. But I think if you look at their lives as they're living in this, their lives aren't really bad sometimes. They're just not what they wanted. And that is the part that gets me. You could have everything you thought you wanted. The husband, the picket fence, the 2 kids, the dog, the car that doesn't, you don't have to worry about it not working, the job, the nice neighbors, the nice neighborhood. And still, these characters self-sabotage. They go off the beaten path, the path they know, to risk it all, for, in hindsight, things that not always were worth it. And I love that aspect of crime fiction. I like that. That's why I write that. I'd rather write the regular guy doing the bad thing than the policeman who's trying to catch them. That's where my point of view comes in there.
And yeah, I think that definitely comes through in the short story collection, is that it's pretty much just regular people going about their lives, and then something maybe happens, or something causes them to end up in this situation. I don't want to make it sound like it's all external forces, but basically just regular people living their lives, and they find themselves in these extraordinary circumstances, or even not necessarily extraordinary circumstances, but I think it could happen to a lot of people, and I'm grateful that I haven't found myself in many of these situations.
Oh, absolutely. I'm always like, I would never do that. This is great, because I would never make that choice.
Right.
Yeah, I get to live vicariously through my characters making just really unfortunate decisions. They don't. I like to think they don't think past the next moment, or they think they're so smart and they've got it 3 moves ahead, but they're not really factoring in everything that might happen. And I think the average person is inherently good, and whether that's because they're afraid of consequences or because they just would never do bad things, there are those gamblers out there who risk things just to see if they can get away with it. And that's the person I like to write about.
Oh, and it seems appropriate then, since you said gamblers, that a lot of the stories take place in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there a couple of stories that you want to highlight? I mean, when there's 13 short stories, I don't want to just go through the book and give everything away for people, but are there a couple that you'd like to highlight?
Depending on the hour, I have different favorites, but the first story, Georgianne, is a deep favorite of mine. It is, maybe on its surface doesn't necessarily seem very Vegas, but it is very Vegas. It's not the Strip. It's an older neighborhood in town that I use for where they live. It is a little bit of my job, so I guess there's a little bit of me in it that way that we touch on in there. But it is, I guess the thing about Vegas, once you go away from the Strip, you could be anywhere, save for the desert. It's suburbia. You could be anywhere. These little tract homes and the little, every house next to it is just a little bit different, but mostly they all look related. And that's Vegas here.
Can I jump in on the first story?
Oh, absolutely.
No. On Georgie, and what I liked about that was that we really got a good sense of these relationships. So it's 4 couples, and even though it's a short story, you did a great job of really filling in how these relationships came about and how they've evolved over the years. So yeah, I mean, it could have been anywhere, but I really liked how you managed to convey that whole backstory without a lot of pages.
Yeah. Thank you. It is, again, that story was like those stereotypical, like the June Cleaver and the 1950s ideal that I wanted in that, but with a little bit more of, these are people who are they want to climb those ladders. They want to be, look down their nose at people. Like I honestly, as much as I love that story, I don't necessarily think any of those people are nice people. They're not very nice. Yeah,
No.
They're not. I mean, like they have, but I mean, like they even not nice people have people they care about. It's I guess that's one of the reasons I really like that story. I think I hit on the thing I was going for. And that was one, again, that kind of showed up nearly whole cloth. And I think the other one was How to Be Good. was another story that kind of took place in a familiar Vegas neighborhood. But, it's thieves and murder. So.
Do you do much research for your stories, or how does that process work for you in terms of writing?
I did do research. Boxing, I think, is the biggest thing that's shown in any of these stories. I was writing other stories that ended up being in my first book, and I had one of them was about a boxer, and I just really delved into that. I have kind of a love-hate relationship with boxing, but how they used to do, HBO used to have the Monday night fights or whatever, but before the actual fight they would like go out with one of the boxers and look at how they're training and where their mind is at, and really that process of them like settling into getting ready for that big fight. And I love to watch that. So I watched a lot of that. I read a lot about boxing. Joyce Carol Oates, I believe, did a book about essays about boxing that was really helpful. And I really just tried to immerse myself in that. And then the residuals, like I wrote those stories and it was great. But the boxing kept showing up. So I wrote these things. And then past that, there was a lot of knife research that's gone into, that repeatedly shows up in my work. Somebody's always got a knife in some story, whether or not they use it, knife, scissors, sharp objects. So there's been a lot of research in that. Weapons, I guess, is the.
So you're another author whose internet search history is probably pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I tend to do a lot of it at work. Well, I'm like working. Oh, could I do that? Like, there's a story that came out earlier this year that literally I was like, can I pour bleach on somebody and set it on fire? This is not things a nice person researches, I feel. But it was important.
Especially at work.
It was important, and it doesn't work, actually. But it was good to know. Was like, so I went down the rabbit hole of what could I use that's an everyday household thing that would work to set somebody on fire if I needed to. So, yeah, that search history is on my work computer. Yes. So,
wow.
I think the story worked out well, but yeah, it's not. My search history is problematic.
I can imagine, but it's as long as you're not looking it up because as long as you're looking it up for writing purposes and nothing else.
Yes, it's like, please look at the work product. Please see, but nobody's dead around me. Look. Yes, the thing.
That's right.
The thing.
Are you working on anything now?
I just finished writing a story for an anthology, so I am a little bit between projects. On August 1st, it is my goal to settle down and write a longer story. I would like for it to be a novel, but I think I'm just shooting for a novella. But it's been kind of percolating, and I think I figured it out. But I need a little bit of a break. But I'm going to settle in to try to write the longer story through the end of the year.
Well, good luck with that. That sounds fun.
Thanks.
So you've got a full-time job, you've got a family, you are a writer. How do you balance everything? Especially with homeschooling this past spring. How do you find the balance in all of those relationships?
In the before time, I really did just steal time. There's guilt for all things. I should be at work more. I should be at home more. I should be, the guilt is just endless and it goes everywhere. It's a mess. but I steal time. I steal time from work with my Post-it notes, and from home, from, on the couch with the kids, on my laptop, or writing notes into my phone as they, pop into my head. I don't know any other way to do it. I don't even know if it's the best way for me to do it. It's just the way I've settled into. With the pandemic, my children, of which two of them are actually over 20 now, but my youngest, he's been with his dad, so I've actually been home alone. And you would think that would have let me write, but alas, I feel like the general stress has not changed my writing habit at all. I'm still just writing in the margins all the time. The bulk of my time is either I'm on my, computer working from home, or sadly catching up on all those shows I didn't watch, and still, oh, that's a good idea, and I jot it down on my phone, and then I go back to binge watching, because this is what soothes my soul right now.
I don't think that you're alone in that. I think that that's a pretty common, we've all had to learn new normals and new, just figuring out how we are existing in this interesting time that we're living in.
Yeah.
I got to admit that I haven't really been catching up on things that I should watch, on series that I should watch. I have just continued to be obsessed with baking shows. I think I've mentioned before my obsession with baking shows, and that has not changed. If I'm watching TV, it's generally, unless I'm watching with my husband, it is generally lately a baking show. And I have found all kinds of baking shows between our various streaming services. I'm sure I could bake something fabulous. No, not really. I'd be one of those people that nailed it. On that note, we are going to take another break, and when we come back, we'll talking about how Nikki got into writing short stories, writing in general. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I will be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast. When I am not watching baking shows, I am interviewing authors, which is even better. So let's go ahead and get back to one of those interviews. Again, I am speaking with Nikki Dolson about her short story collection, Love and Other Criminal Behaviors.
So is writing something that you've always wanted to do? When did you start writing to try to publish?
I started writing with the intent to publish in 2006. I thought, you know what, I'm unhappy in other aspects of my life, and I didn't have that creative outlet. I did so many things trying to do that. But then I was like, I used to love to write. Let's just write. We're going to write and get published because people do that. So I took a writing workshop at the community college, thinking they would be like, okay, we're going to read some short stories, talk about some things, maybe I give you a prompt or two, and you write it and you turn it in and we go. But I didn't understand the concept of workshops, And I sat in that class, and the teacher looked at me and went, okay, next week you're going to have a story. And I went, what? What? And I had to have a story in a week. So I wrote a story in a week. It shall never see the light of day. But that story, when I turned it in, that teacher said, oh, there's some good things in here, but I got to tell you, there's this one line that I wish I had written. Good job. And I have carried that piece of just feedback forever. Like it was the push that I needed, that you're not good yet, but you know, there's hope there, you know. And that teacher is still a really important person in my life, and he's always very supportive, and he's a big part of the reason why I kept at it. You know, but positive reinforcement with, I guess we should say, tough love. You know, this is not good right here though. This is good, but the rest of this, ooh, no.
Right, but at least there was that one really encouraging part that you were able to take with you and kind of nurture.
Yes.
And yeah.
You know, and
Go ahead.
say this, that later on, there were other teachers who helped me with that, and who, again, you run across that one person who like gets you, and they're like, you belong here. And then I found kind of the community, which really helped me understand things, and again made me the writer I am now. So there's been a lot of people on that journey.
No, but that's good. I think, you know, writing can be an isolating or solitary venture, but there's also so many people along the way that help you and help you to hone the craft, and you know, bounce ideas off of each other, and you know, beta readers and all of those things really help you to get better.
Yeah.
So,
definitely.
So from your particular experience, do you have advice for aspiring authors?
Find your people, whatever you write. Find other writers. Obviously right now we can't all get together, but having somebody just to talk about writing with, to talk about that great thing that you read, to ask questions about, you know, how do I write a party scene? You know, and what books do you think that, to have a community of people who could be like, you know, go look up this book, there's a party scene in there. See how this person did it in this short story or in this novel. It was incredibly important to have found people who were willing to offer up that advice, who were willing to read even just little snippets of my work, or quite honestly, just talk about writing. I mean, I can't tell you how many things I've just figured out just by talking about it. Just, you know, what is it that you like, or what is it you're trying to do, and bounce that off of somebody else, or listen to them when they bounce their ideas off of you, or what you love about a story or what you hated. It's like you need to read also, and you need to talk about it. And I think both of those things feed the subconscious mind, which then feeds into the conscious mind when you're writing. You know, read and talk to people, and then write. Always
Thank
write.
you. Yeah, thank you for that. Are there any of your other writings that you've done that you would like to highlight at this point?
My first book, it's like that first workshop class, I wrote the first story that would later become All Things Violent. Like that is a set of interlinked stories that came together to be that novel. And it is like a lot of the stories in Love and Other Criminal Behavior about relationships. But in this case, For All Things Violent, it's the contract killer with boyfriend problems. So the killing happens, but it's not really the point in that one. But it's as some of the first things I wrote and cut my teeth on to learn how to write. It's near and dear to the heart.
It's your baby. I understand that. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. I know you. Well, wait. Let me backtrack. When you take the time to read for yourself, what do you like to read?
I go back and forth. Right now, I'm on a big science fiction kick. Science fiction is my second love. I guess hard sci-fi. Spaceships and new planets and that kind of thing. That is just truly what I enjoy to read. So books like Anne Leckie's series, Ancillary Justice, is great. Martha Wells has the Murderbot Diaries. Oh, Murderbot! Everybody should read Murderbot. They're so enjoyable. And I know I'm saying Murderbot, but there's not a lot of murder. It's just you just look up Murderbot. Don't be turned off by the murder in it, really. So I'm reading a lot of sci-fi. But when I'm not reading that, I am definitely reading within my chosen genre. My friend's book, S.A. Cosby, just came out, Blacktop Wasteland. This is getting a lot of buzz, but I read it in draft form, and it's so great. He's writing about, a part of the South that doesn't get normally written about. And it's the Black man and his family, and again, what you do for family to take care of them, to keep them safe, and also what the ghosts in our family can drive us to do. Love, or the lack thereof, has a profound effect on the characters in his book, and it's great. What else? There's a book called Cottonmouth, and of course, since I'm on the spot and completely forgetting her name, I'm a terrible person. But it's called Cottonmouth.
I totally get that, though.
She is a great writer. I enjoy that book. Kelly J. Ford. There we go. Kelly J. Ford's Cottonmouth. Again, it is about. It is. She gets the feel, the setting. These people are alive on the page. They are hard and heartbroken, and what Kelly J. Ford does on the page, that book will stay with you. And I don't know how to talk about it more without giving it away. But Cottonmouth, Kelly J. Ford, so great. So I mean, there's so many great books. And then if you're just reading standard mysteries, just Agatha Christie, she's up there. And I cannot write mysteries like that. I want to so desperately, but there are great mysteries out there from writers of color, from Walter Mosley, Kelly Garrett's series, Detective by Day.
I love Kelly Garrett.
Mm-hmm. She's great and amazing, and I was so sad that her series stopped at 2 books. But Hollywood Homicide and Hollywood Ending are well worth your time to be entertained and to be immersed in a murder mystery that's fun also. although I write a lot about blood and bodies, so maybe my idea of fun is different from everybody else's, but it's fun. Gosh, there's so much good. Yeah, I'm kind of all over the place. Have you got that? I read a lot.
No, I get that. When people ask me what's your favorite book or what, I'm looking for a new book to read, it's like, how much time have you got?
Yeah, I'm like, you need to narrow it down for me. I'm like, do you like dead bodies? Okay, no. Okay, we'll toss that aside. Okay, do you like?
Exactly.
But there's so much good stuff out there. I could tell you all day.
So I'm almost afraid to ask and make you go down another rabbit hole. But what have you been binge watching?
Oh, well, first and foremost, I don't know about anybody else on the planet, but The Old Guard, the Netflix movie, loved it. I think I've probably watched it once every day this week. There's a comic that it's based on that is really great, and you get where the foundation for the movie came from. And then from that, I have binge watched Killing Eve, so great. And gosh, what else? Honestly, I've been touching base with a lot of comfort watches too. So The West Wing to make me feel better about the world a little bit.
Yeah.
That said, I also touch into Scandal, because it is also just so, it's not as far out there as it used to be. Like, I had to stop watching it when it was on TV because it was just, I can't. And now I'm like, you know what? None of this is out of the ordinary. Go ahead. Yeah, let's do this. Special black ops team in the White House? Why not?
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's I the comfort shows for sure. And then like Knives Out, I've watched that, I don't know, a million times since I bought it, since it came out on digital. It's such a great mystery. And fun, and you have to pay attention, and those structures, movie structures, is the thing I try to pay attention to a lot, for just how they tell stories that way and how I tell stories in my fiction. Because it works both ways. There's stuff to learn both ways. So I do a lot of that.
Real quick, let's go ahead and take our last break of the podcast. When we come back, you can find out more about Nikki via her website and where you can connect with her on social media. Oh man, her Instagram. We'll talk about that. Stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and the conclusion of my interview with author Nikki Dolson.
So I know you have a website, so if you can direct people to the address of your website and where they can interact with you on social media.
Well, my website is my name, Nikki Dolson, NIKKIDOLSON.com. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram also under my name. Nikki Dolson, no spaces, no periods, just one name all squished together. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram there. Twitter, I'm far more active on. Instagram, it's I have an affection for a good print. So a lot of what's on there is different fabric prints of what I'm wearing, and mingled with, have you read this book? You should read this book. There's a lot of that.
I like it. That sounds fun, actually. Well, I thank you for that. And we've talked about a variety of different things today, but is there anything that we haven't touched on that you wanted to make sure to bring up or highlight in this interview?
We, as writers, have, a choice of what we put out there. I stand by, like, the story just comes to you and you have to run with it. But I think that the choices we make in our fiction that we put out in the world is important. And I also think, what we read is important. Read beyond your comfort zone. Read in those genres, those authors you might not naturally gravitate to. I mean, yeah, I'm saying force yourself to read somebody other than the standard white guy is what I'm saying. There are so many wonderful writers out there. Roxane Gay, Rahman Alam, Layla Lamy. There are worlds yet undiscovered, and they are out there at your fingertips if you just reach a little farther. It's not always easy, but it's almost always worth it.
Yeah, and I think in this day and age where we can follow people on social media and interact, we can read outside of our comfort zones and our usual genres, because there's so many options out there, and you can find lists of of different things that you maybe haven't considered reading before, but somebody has put together a top 10, 50, 100 lists of mysteries by people of color or whatever, what have you. So I've done a lot of Googling in my day for that kind of stuff.
For sure. Yeah. There's so much. I mean, it's like my love of science fiction. I would love to be able to write it, and I've yet to figure out how to do it. But I'm like, I love this book. What is it I love about it? Okay, so we have spaceships and politicians on another world. Well, that has to be its own little genre. Who else is writing in that? And to just, poke at it and try it. I think everybody should swear by, like, the 50-page rule. If you're not still feeling it after 50 pages, get out. I mean, so be it. But for those who say, they didn't connect with it, I feel like they're not actually trying. It's literally a thing that most of the rest of the world does on a regular basis. Just try a little harder.
Yep, I would agree.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. Again, the book is Love and Other Criminal Behaviors. Nikki, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's such a good time.
Thank you once again to Nikki for joining me to talk about her short story collection, Love and Other Criminal Behaviors. I mentioned when we came back, or when we were going to the last break, that we'd talk about her Instagram, and her Instagram is fabulous. I was joking with her after we stopped recording that she was just going to find me in her closet one day, because she seriously has the best dresses. She is the Ms. Frizzle from Magic School Bus of authors, and her day job, but I'll just call her the Ms. Frizzle of authors, and I mean that in the best possible way. She has the best patterns, and all of her dresses are these fabulous sort of A-line kind of 50s looking, almost not cocktail dresses, but dresses, just something that I love. And so I was teasing her that she's just going to find me in her closet one day, which is creepy. And don't worry, I really don't have any intention of ever showing up in any author's closets. You should never say never, because someday what happens if I end up in somebody's closet? No, I can't even come up with a scenario where that would happen unless I become fabulous best friends with somebody and then we are together in the closet picking out outfits. But trust me, I'm not going to stalk Nikki and her dresses. I will stalk her Instagram, though, because fabulous patterns, which has nothing to do with books. But, there are stuff to do with books on the Instagram as well. But I was in love with the patterns. Enough from me. Thank you, Nikki, for putting up with my goofiness and for taking the time to talk to me about your short stories. It was very much appreciated. Thank you, as always, to you, my listeners. You know I love you and love spending time with you, even though we can't see each other via podcasts. But if you are a fan of this podcast, as always, I would like to ask for you to write us a nice review. People usually only write reviews when they're negative. So if you have something lovely to say about this podcast, it would be so helpful if you could write that in a review on whatever platform you listen to. Would be awesome. You could give us a nice 5-star review too, if that's an option on your platform. You can also follow us on social media, GSMC Book Review, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Hit me up. Let me know what you think about the books that I talk about, the authors that I talk about, if you've read any of those books, what you're reading in general. You know I love to talk about books, so hit me up on social media. I hope you are having a much better July than I am having, and I hope you're having a wonderful week. And I hope that you will join me on Friday for my next interview. It is a returning author. This author joined me for the first time back in 2018, and she is joining me again for an interview about her new book, The Ungodly Hour. That is author Lori A. Egan. So please join me for that interview. Lori's always a lot of fun to talk to. Have a wonderful week. Make sure that week involves plenty of time to get yourself lost in a good book. Thanks.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Book Review Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.